My biggest regret after failing to protect my child. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The nurse asked one question, and I couldn't answer. I had Ellie's tiny sock in my fist like it was proof I deserved her, like if I squeezed hard enough the universe would rewind 10 hours. The pediatric ER smelled like bleach and warm plastic. A TV in the corner played a cooking show with the sound muted, and every time someone on screen smiled, I tasted bile. Detective Park stood near the door, not blocking it, but somehow still blocking my air. His jacket was damp at the shoulders from the rain outside. He didn't look like the movies. No swagger. Just a tired man holding a folder with my daughter's name on it. "Jordan," he said, voice steady. "When was the last time you saw your daughter awake and uninjured?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because the real answer wasn't a time. It was a decision. It was me, handing her backpack to a man everybody called so good with kids, because I needed one shift covered and one argument avoided. Across the hall, a woman with a CPS badge flipped through paperwork like she was sorting coupons. I caught a glimpse of my name on the top page and the word neglect in all caps. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd faint. I tried to focus on Ellie's stuffed rabbit, Star, peeking out of her hospital bag. Star's ear was bent like always, like Ellie had worried it into that shape while she watched cartoons on my couch. It shouldn't have been there. Nothing about today should have existed. I started. Park didn't pounce. He just waited, and that was worse. In the silence, I heard a child cry behind a curtain, and my body flinched like it belonged to someone else. "Caleb says he was never alone with her," Park said gently. "He says you dropped her off late, angry, and she fell." "That's not." My voice cracked. "That's not what happened." Park pulled out his phone. "We pulled a doorbell video from your building. There's a timestamp that doesn't match anyone's story." He turned the screen toward me. "Grainy hallway. My welcome mat." A figure moving fast past my door like he owned the place. Then I saw what he was carrying, and my lungs stopped working. The time code burned into my eyes. 3:17 p.m. Then Detective Park asked why Caleb had a copy of my key. The worst part was that the day started like any other. Ellie woke me by pressing Star's bent ear against my cheek and whisper singing, "Good morning, Captain," like I was the boss of some ship that barely floated. I packed her lunch, apple slices, crackers, a note with a doodle of us holding hands, while my phone buzzed with work texts I couldn't ignore. Rent was due in 4 days. My manager had already warned me about missing shifts. Ellie's dad was gone in the way some people are gone while still being alive. A monthly check, a few seen receipts, no actual help. Caleb had slipped into the gap like a solution. He lived 3 blocks away, worked community outreach at a youth center, and people loved him. The daycare staff greeted him by name. Moms at pickup told me, "You're lucky. He's so patient." Even Rosa, my neighbor, had started calling him that charming one, like charm was a background check. He wasn't Ellie's father. He wasn't even officially my boyfriend. He was just there, offering. That morning he texted me first. "Caleb, I can do pickup today if you're slammed." Me? "You sure? It's my day?" "Caleb," Jordan breathed. "You trust me, right?" I stared at the screen too long. Trust was cheaper than childcare. Trust was easier than admitting I was drowning. I'd drop off, MS. Klein at daycare smiled. "Ellie's been talking about Caleb's pancake Saturdays." Ellie tugged my sleeve. "Can Caleb come to the playground after school?" "We'll see," I said, already halfway gone in my head, running through my shift and my bills, and the way exhaustion made every decision feel like a coin toss. In the parking lot, Rosa's old sedan rolled up beside me. She lowered her window and pointed at Ellie's car seat strap. "You tighten that," she said. "Too loose." I did. I snapped, then softened. "I'm just tired." Rosa watched me like she could see through my skin. Tired makes you ignore things you shouldn't. I laughed it off because laughing was easier than listening. I kissed Ellie's forehead, promised I'd be there at 5, and walked away with my stomach tight for no reason I could name. In the rearview mirror, Ellie's smile vanished when she saw Caleb. The first time my body tried to warn me, it did it in the quietest way. It was a Thursday, April 12th. I remember because the daycare newsletter had Spring Picture Day in bold, and I'd forgotten to send Ellie in her yellow dress. She came home in leggings with glitter stuck to her knees and a bruise on her wrist that looked like someone had drawn half moons with a thumb. I froze in the doorway. "What happened?" I tried to keep my voice light, like asking about finger paint. Ellie pulled her sleeve down so fast it snagged. Nothing. Caleb stood behind her with a grocery bag and that cinnamon gum smell that always clung to him. She tripped on the stairs, he said immediately. I caught her. It probably looks worse than it is. I knelt. Show me, baby. Ellie wouldn't meet my eyes. She hugged Star to her chest and whispered, he got mad at the stairs. Caleb laughed, quick and charming. She means I got mad at myself. I told her, Caleb, watch your feet. Right? He leaned closer to Ellie, smile still on. Right, kiddo? Ellie nodded too hard. Her ponytail bobbed like a broken metronome. I felt something cold spread across my ribs. Then I did the thing I hate myself for. I explained it away. Okay, I said, forcing a smile. Accidents happen. Caleb's hand brushed the back of my neck like we were a team. See? You get it. You don't do drama. Rosa knocked later that night to borrow sugar. Her eyes went straight to Ellie's wrist when Ellie reached for the jar. That's a grip bruise, Rosa said flatly. It's from the stairs, I said, too fast. Rosa didn't argue. She just set the sugar down and looked at me like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Jordan, she said, low. Kids don't lie like that unless they're scared. After she left, I opened my phone and hovered over the daycare app, thinking about messaging Ms. Klein, thinking about asking if anything had happened at pickup. My thumb shook. Caleb called from the kitchen, cheerful. You coming to eat? I locked my screen. I told myself I was protecting Ellie from chaos. I didn't realize I was protecting Caleb from consequences. That night, Ellie asked one question that made my heart stop. Ellie's question was small, almost polite. Mom, she said, arranging crackers into a little circle on her plate. If someone says don't tell, do I still tell you? I stared at her. My brain tried to sprint ahead to conclusions and then slam the brakes. Who said that? I asked. Ellie shrugged like it was about cartoons. Just someone. Caleb's fork paused midair. He smiled at Ellie without showing his teeth. We talk about surprises, he said. Like birthday stuff? I wanted to push. I wanted to say the word tell again louder. But I'd worked a double. I had 3 hours of sleep and a head full of numbers. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Ellie was 6, and 6-year-olds mashed truth and imagination together like Play-Doh. The next Monday, my manager cornered me by the break room. Jordan, I need you for the late shift, he said. If you can't do it, I need to know right now. Late shift meant pickup was impossible. Daycare charged a fee for every minute after 6. I texted Ellie's dad. No response. I texted Rosa. She sent back, doctor appointment, can't. And then Caleb texted, I can take her. I already promised pancakes. I remember the exact moment my gut clenched. I was standing in the copy room, fluorescent lights buzzing, and my hands went sweaty. My instinct said no in a quiet voice I'd learned to ignore. I typed, okay, just this once. Caleb replied instantly, you're doing the right thing. I've got you. At 4:46 p.m., I dropped Ellie at my apartment first so she could grab Star and her coat. Caleb met us in the hallway like he'd been waiting. Ellie pressed herself behind my legs. I want to stay with you. I can't, honey, I said, trying to sound upbeat. Mom has to work so we can keep this place. Caleb crouched to Ellie's level. Hey, Captain, he said, stealing my nickname like it was his. We'll be fine. Ellie's eyes flicked to my door. The chain was unlatched. I always latched it. I'll be back before you're asleep. I promised, lying with love. As I hurried toward the stairs, I heard Caleb's voice change. Just for a second, just enough. Ellie, he said, sharp, pick up the rabbit. And then my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. At 5:12 p.m., while I was stocking supplies and pretending my chest wasn't collapsing, my phone rang with the daycare number. I answered too cheerfully. Hi, this is Jordan. Miss Klein's voice was tight. Jordan, are you on your way? Caleb is picking her up, I said. He should be there. A pause, the kind that turns your blood into ice. Caleb wasn't on Ellie's approved list today, she said. And we don't have him signed in. I stepped into the hallway and pulled up the daycare app with shaking fingers. My password didn't work. I tried again. Locked out. My throat closed like my body knew something my brain refused to. Miss Klein kept talking. Ellie was last in my classroom at 3. At 3:11, someone signed her out through the app. We assumed it was you. My voice went thin. I didn't sign her out. Jordan, she said, softer now. Ellie isn't here. I don't remember grabbing my coat. I remember rain on my windshield and my hands slipping on the wheel. I called Caleb and got voicemail. Again. At 5:28 p.m., I called 911. My daughter is missing, I said. Her name is Ellie. She was signed out at 3:11. The dispatcher stayed calm. Who was supposed to pick her up? Caleb Brooks. Relationship? I swallowed. He helps me. Stay on the line, she said. Officers are en route. At 6:09 p.m., Caleb finally called. Jordan, he said, breathless, don't freak out. Where is she? I screamed. She fell, he said. I took her to urgent care. I'm handling it. Which one? He named a clinic across town, one I'd never been to in my life. When I burst into the waiting room at 6:37 p.m., the air smelled like coffee and antiseptic. A receptionist looked up, saw my face, and pointed without asking. Behind a curtain, I heard Ellie whimper. Caleb stood with his hands in his pockets, calm like a man waiting for a table. He didn't look guilty. That should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me. A nurse stepped between us. Are you Ellie's mother? I nodded, already sobbing. She glanced at a clipboard, and my skin went cold. Then why did your boyfriend write that you refused an ambulance? Ellie lay on the exam table with Star tucked under her chin like a shield. A thin bandage covered her forehead. Her eyes were open but unfocused, like she was staring through the ceiling. I reached for her hand, and she flinched. The nurse asked questions in the same tone she'd use for allergies. Any loss of consciousness? Vomiting? Does she have a primary doctor? When did the fall happen? Caleb answered before I could. Around 4. Playground. She slipped off the ladder. I snapped. You said urgent care because of a fall. Why didn't you call me? He looked wounded. Perfect. I did. You didn't pick up. That's not true. Detective Park arrived while the doctor was shining a light into Ellie's eyes. He didn't announce himself. He just stood at the foot of the bed and listened. Jordan, he said when the doctor stepped out, tell me the timeline. I tried. I really did. But every sentence made me sound like the villain. So you left your daughter with a non-guardian. Park summarized, pen moving. You didn't verify pickup. You didn't have him approved. I swallowed. I thought I was doing the best I could. Caleb put a hand on my shoulder like comfort. We're all stressed, he told Park. Jordan's been forgetful lately. My jaw clenched. Don't. The CPS worker showed up next, badge and clipboard, and asked to speak to Ellie alone. The words safety plan and temporary hold floated through the room like smoke. That's when Rosa barreled in, hair frizzed from rain, face set. I told you, she said to me, not whispering. I told you he wasn't right. Caleb's smile tightened. Rosa, not now. Rosa ignored him. She leaned close to Park. Ask the daycare about his app access, she said. Ask why he always knows her schedule. Park's eyes flicked to me. Does Caleb have your passwords? My mouth went dry. He helped me set it up. Park nodded slowly, like a door closing. Then he spoke to the nurse by the chart. What time did Caleb say the fall happened, he asked. The nurse checked her notes. He wrote 4:05. Park's gaze sharpened. But daycare says Ellie was signed out at 3:11. Caleb's face didn't change, but his fingers twitched once at his side. And then Park asked the question that made the room go silent. Park's question was simple. Why would your daycare app show your location at 3:11? I blinked. I was at work. He didn't accuse me. He just turned his phone so I could see a map pin. My name. A timestamp. A dot sitting on the daycare's address like I'd been there, like I'd done the pickup myself. Caleb spoke softly, like he was helping me remember. Maybe your phone glitched. You've been dropping it a lot. Rosa made a sound in her throat, half growl, half prayer. Park pulled me aside into the hallway. Do you share accounts? He asked. Passwords? Devices? I thought about the night Caleb helped me set up the daycare app when it kept crashing. I'd handed him my phone. I'd watched him type fast, confident. He'd smiled and said, Technology hates you, Jordan. Yes, I admitted. He knows my passcode. Park's face didn't change, but his tone did. Then we treat your accounts like evidence. He told me what to do like he was giving CPR instructions. Don't delete anything. Don't confront. Screenshot with timestamps. Email everything to myself and to him. Turn on cloud backups. Write down exact times while my memory was fresh. Chain of custody. Words I'd only heard on TV, now living in my pocket. When I finally got a minute alone, I opened my messages with Caleb. Whole chunks were missing. Where there should have been jokes and on my way, there were blank gaps, like someone had taken scissors to my life. I scrolled up and found the last thing I'd sent before work. Just pick her up and go straight home. Caleb's reply was still there. Of course. You can trust me. I took screenshots with my hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Then I opened my call log and saw 3 outgoing calls to Caleb at 3:06 p.m. I hadn't called him at 3:06. I'd been in a staff meeting. My stomach turned. Someone had used my phone, or my account, or both. Back in Ellie's room, she finally focused on me for a second. Her voice was tiny. "Mom," she whispered. "Caleb said you already knew." I felt my face go numb. Knew what? Ellie's eyes darted to the door like it might open. That I was bad. Then an email flashed. Your daycare password was changed at 6:52. The next morning, I sat in the police station lobby with a coffee I never drank. My phone was in an evidence bag, and CPS had scheduled an environment check, as if my apartment could explain why Ellie flinched. Detective Park called me into a small interview room and slid a folder across the table. "Caleb Brooks isn't his only name," he said. My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" Park opened the folder. A driver's license with the same face and a different last name. Then a court order. Temporary restraining order. "I can't tell you everything yet," Park said. "But there was a prior complaint involving a child. Different county. It didn't result in charges." My ears rang. Why was he around Ellie then? Park tapped the folder. "Because people like Caleb learn where the rules are soft." I thought about daycare staff smiling at him. About the way he made help feel like a favor you weren't allowed to question. Rosa sat beside me, arms crossed hard. "I told you he collected people," she muttered. "Like trophies." That afternoon, CPS worker Nguyen met me at the hospital, voice gentle but firm. "We have to consider a protective hold," she said, "until we know who had access and why." "You're punishing me," I whispered. "I'm protecting Ellie," she corrected. "That includes protecting her from adults who didn't protect her." I signed forms with shaking hands. Releases for daycare video, consent for records, permission for Park to request clinic notes. Paperwork that made everything permanent. When I got to Ellie's room, she was awake, staring at the TV without seeing it. "Sweetheart," I said, "can you tell me what happened yesterday?" Ellie swallowed. "He said if I told, you'd be mad." I forced my voice steady. "Mad at who?" She didn't answer. She just whispered, "He knows where you hide the spare key." Park's phone rang right then. He listened, face tightening, and looked straight at me. "They found Caleb's car," he said, "and it's not where he told us it was." While Ellie slept, my mind replayed the moment I failed her like a loop I couldn't pause. It wasn't the Monday I left her with Caleb. It was April 12th, in my kitchen, with the bruise on her wrist between my fingers. Her skin was warm. She smelled like strawberries and daycare glue. Caleb's cinnamon gum filled the room like a curtain. "Mom," Ellie had asked, crackers arranged in a careful circle, "if someone says don't tell, do I still tell you?" I could hear my own answer now, bright and wrong. "That's for surprises, honey." She'd watched me, eyes steady, like she was measuring whether I could hold the truth. Then she'd nodded and changed the subject, a kid learning that adults sometimes close doors without noticing. That day in the hospital, regret stopped being an emotion and became a sensation, pressure behind my eyes, a buzzing need to fix something that couldn't be unfixed. Detective Park told me to stay quiet. "Don't contact him," he said. "Let us do it." But Caleb had used my quiet before, and I couldn't stand the idea of him doing it again. Rosa found me in the hallway and grabbed my elbow. "Write everything down," she said. "He lives in the gaps." So I did. Dates, times, exact phrases. I pulled Ellie's urgent care intake sheet where Caleb had signed as guardian and photographed it. I recovered screenshots from the cloud backup. I forwarded them to Park with my hands shaking. Then I found something that made my blood go cold, a draft email in my account, addressed to daycare, apologizing for my confusion yesterday and confirming Caleb was authorized for pickup. I hadn't written it. I snapped a photo and forwarded it to Park. Less than 2 minutes later, an unknown number called. I answered, voice hoarse. "Hello." Caleb's voice slid through the speaker, calm like we were discussing groceries. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Jordan." My lungs wouldn't fill. "Where are you?" He chuckled. "You always get dramatic when you're scared." "Don't," I said. "Don't talk to my child." There was a pause, just long enough to feel intentional. I know you just forwarded that email to the detective. By noon, Caleb had flipped the story so fast it made me dizzy. He showed up at the hospital lobby with a coffee in one hand and a bouquet of cheap grocery store flowers in the other, like props in a play where he was the devoted partner and I was the unstable mother. Security let him through because he smiled at them and said the right words. I came as soon as I heard, he said loudly, eyes wet. Jordan wouldn't answer, and I was terrified. Rosa was with me, thank God. She stepped between us like a wall. You don't get to perform here, she said. Caleb's smile didn't move, but his eyes sharpened. Rosa, you're not family. She's more family than you, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. Caleb turned to me, soft again. Jordan, listen. You're overwhelmed. You made a mistake. Let me help you clean this up. I'm not cleaning anything up, I said. Tell Detective Park where you were between 3 and 5. He blinked, offended, like I'd asked him to pay his own bills. I told them. Playground. Accident. A nurse walked by and Caleb reached out, gentle, touching my arm like a husband. Babe, don't do this. Ellie needs calm. My body reacted the way it always had with conflict, a pull toward peace at any price. For half a second, I almost let him guide me back into the old story, the one where I apologized and he forgave. Then Rosa leaned in and whispered, he's trying to make you doubt your own memory. I looked at Caleb's hand on my arm, and suddenly it felt like a trap. Detective Park appeared near the elevators, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Caleb, he called, voice even. We need you to come answer some questions. Caleb's face flickered, just a flash of irritation before the smile returned. Of course, he said. Anything for Ellie. As he walked past me, he lowered his voice so only I could hear. You signed the medical forms, he murmured. They'll believe what you already agreed to. He kept walking, calm as ever, but my stomach dropped because he was right. Park looked at me, eyes hard. Jordan, did you read the part where Caleb became primary caregiver? I hadn't read the forms. I'd scribbled my name because I was shaking, because I just wanted Ellie, because Caleb kept saying, it's standard, and I wanted to believe him. Detective Park slid the urgent care packet across his desk and pointed. This line says you declined transport, he said. This says the injury happened at 4:05. And this lists Caleb as primary caregiver, with permission to make medical decisions. My throat tightened. I didn't authorize that. You signed it, he said, not cruel, just factual. So we don't fight feelings. We fight paper. Park built the plan out of receipts. He requested Ellie's full chart from the clinic and the hospital, triage notes, time-stamped vitals, intake statements. CPS worker Nguyen filed for an emergency protective order and a safety plan. Ellie stayed under observation, visitors screened, no more helpful adults filling out forms beside me. Park also sent a preservation request to the daycare for camera footage and app logs. We need metadata, he explained. Device ID, IP address, the exact second the sign-out happened. It sounds like spy stuff, I said. It's just math, he replied. Math doesn't get manipulated. Rosa agreed to give a statement about what she'd noticed. Caleb hovering, Caleb knowing Ellie's schedule, Caleb in our hallway when he had no reason to be. He hates witnesses, she said. That's why he picked someone exhausted. Park's trap was boring on purpose. A voluntary follow-up interview. A supervised item exchange. Caleb would bring Ellie's backpack and anything he claimed was at his place. Gwen would be present. Rosa would be present. Everything documented. He'll charm, Park warned me. He'll blame. He'll try to make you doubt yourself. That night, I sat by Ellie's bed and said, no more secrets. Ellie's fingers tightened around Star. He said secrets keep families together, she whispered. I swallowed. Secrets keep bad people safe. Park stepped into the doorway holding a fresh printout. We got the daycare log, he said, and his face was grim. Park laid the printout on the bed tray like it was sacred. Daycare app sign out, he said. 3:11 and 42 seconds p.m. I leaned closer. That's when Ellie disappeared. Park tapped the next line. Device, iPhone 13. Device ID. I stared. My phone was an old Android. I'd never owned an iPhone. Gwen brought another sheet from urgent care. Intake note, she said. Caleb reported the fall at 4:05, but triage documented Ellie's symptoms started before 3:30. My skin prickled. So he moved the time. He needed you to look careless, Park said, not him to look intentional. He opened his laptop and played a clip from daycare security. Timestamp, 3:09 p.m. Caleb walked into the lobby, smiled at the desk, held up a phone like he'd done it 100 times. At 3:11, the door opened. Ellie walked out beside him, star dangling from her fingers. My throat tightened. He wasn't approved. He didn't need to be, Park said. Not if he could sign out as you. The supervised exchange happened 2 hours later. Caleb strolled into the station carrying Ellie's backpack like a good deed. He smiled at Park. I'm here to cooperate, he said. Ellie means the world to me. Park's voice stayed flat. Whose phone did you use to sign her out at 3:11? Caleb blinked, the smallest crack. Jordan signed her out. We have the device ID, Park said. iPhone 13. Not Jordan's. Caleb's eyes slid to me. For a second the mask dropped. Cold irritation, like I'd ruined his day. Then warmth returned. Jordan, he said softly. Tell them you gave me permission. You were stressed. You asked me to handle it. My voice shook, but it held. I never asked you to lie. Caleb's smile sharpened. You left her with me. You signed the papers. You didn't listen. You did all of it. Park stood. Caleb, you're done. His jaw tightened, as if he'd been waiting weeks for this. Caleb leaned back, still calm, and said the last thing I expected. You're going to arrest me, he said, but you'll lose your daughter anyway. They handcuffed Caleb in a hallway where the walls were covered with posters about community safety. The irony felt like a slap. He didn't fight. He didn't yell. He looked at me like I was a disappointing employee. This could have been handled privately, he said. Detective Park read him his rights. Gwen stood beside me, already drafting the emergency protective order paperwork. Rosa squeezed my shoulder so hard it hurt. I expected relief to flood in the second the cuffs clicked. It didn't. What I felt was dread, because now everything I'd ignored was going to be examined under bright lights, and Ellie was the one who'd pay for my blind spots. At the emergency custody hearing 2 days later, I sat in a courtroom with shaking knees while a judge flipped through packets of evidence like my life was a stack of receipts. Park testified about the app logs and device ID. Gwen testified about the safety plan. Caleb's lawyer painted me as reckless. She left a 6-year-old with an unrelated adult, the lawyer said. She failed to vet him. She failed to approve him. She failed. I wanted to stand up and scream, yes. Yes, I did. I failed. But I'm here now. Instead, I gripped Star in my lap because Ellie insisted I bring it so it doesn't get lonely. The judge granted a protective order and no contact conditions for Caleb. But she also ordered parenting classes for me, supervision during exchanges with Ellie's dad, and a home check. Even with Caleb in custody, my choices were still on trial. Outside the courthouse, a coworker texted, "Heard about CPS. Are you coming back?" I didn't know how to answer. Shame has a way of leaking into everything. Your job, your friendships, your mirror. That night in the hospital, Ellie woke crying and wouldn't let go of my shirt. He's gone, I promised. He can't come here. Ellie shook her head. He said you'd forget again. My throat closed. I won't. Detective Park called me at 2:14 a.m. Jordan, he said, voice low. We pulled Caleb's phone data. I sat up so fast my spine cracked. And there are messages, Park said, and they don't just involve Ellie. Ellie came home 3 weeks later with a folder of discharge papers and a new flinch I didn't know how to undo. CPS didn't close the case, like on TV. They built rules around us. Gwen helped me write a safety plan in plain language. Approved pickup list in writing, a password at daycare that only Ellie and I knew, no unsupervised visits with anyone outside immediate family, locks changed, spare key removed from its old hiding spot. It felt humiliating to need a system for things other parents did on instinct. Then I realized, instinct is a system too. Mine had been screaming, and I'd trained myself not to hear it. Therapy started with Ellie drawing pictures of our apartment hallway. Every drawing had the same detail. The chain lock, huge, like a monster mouth. The therapist didn't push for details. She taught Ellie phrases instead. I don't like that. I need my mom. Secrets are not safe. Gwen taught me phrases too. If you need childcare, ask me. Don't ask the person who benefits from your exhaustion. Document everything. Trust what your body tells you before your brain explains it away. I put cameras at the front door and the hallway. I stopped sharing passwords with anyone. I made a rule with Rosa. If she saw something, She told me, and I didn't argue. One evening, months later, Ellie and I sat on the couch eating microwave popcorn. She pressed Star's bent ear against her cheek and watched a cartoon like a normal kid. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Then Ellie paused the TV and looked at me with that too-old seriousness. "Mom," she said, "if someone says they're sorry a lot, does that mean they're safe?" My throat tightened. "Not always," I said. "Safe people prove it with actions." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "I like our new rules." I kissed her hair. "Me too. We'd filed for address confidentiality, but paperwork can't erase memory." Ellie stared toward the front door where the new deadbolt gleamed. "Is Caleb still allowed to know where we live?" I used to think being a good parent meant being calm, keeping peace, not making a scene. I confused quiet with safety, and Caleb walked right through that confusion like it was an open door. My biggest regret isn't just that Ellie got hurt. It's the moment my body warned me and I talked it out of existing. The bruise. The don't tell. The way Ellie clung to my legs in the hallway. I treated those moments like inconveniences instead of alarms. I paid for that. Ellie paid more. Caleb's case dragged on in a way that felt cruelly ordinary. Continuances, filings, new hearings. Park stayed steady. Gwen stayed strict. Rosa stayed furious. I stayed accountable because self-hate didn't protect Ellie, but systems did. Here's what I built, and what I wish I'd had from day one. One written pickup list. No exceptions, no but he's nice. A password at school and daycare that changes monthly. No shared passwords, no shared devices, no help setting up apps. Cameras at entrances and a log of every weird moment, even the small ones. One person like Rosa who will tell you the truth when you're tired. And the hardest rule, if your gut says no, you don't argue it into a yes. Ellie healed slowly. Some nights, she woke sweating and asked me to read the same picture book 3 times, like repetition could stitch something back together. I read it every time. I never rushed her. I never said, "It's fine," just to make myself feel better. One evening, she taped a drawing to our fridge, me, her, Star, and a big silver lock on the door. Under it she wrote, in crooked letters, "Safe now." I stared at that paper until my eyes burned, because it felt like forgiveness and a warning at the same time. If you're reading this and thinking, "I don't want to overreact," hear me. Asking for help isn't an accusation. It's a seatbelt. Call the school, call the pediatrician, ask CPS what steps protect your child, and tell one safe adult what you noticed, out loud.